Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast presented by Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Steven, and I am the host. And joining me is my guy, Tyler, as always. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing this morning?
I'm all right. I feel like I know what's happening tomorrow, so I'm just kind of even keeled, and I'm happy to be surprised tomorrow if they win. But yeah, I'm all right. How are you doing, Steven?
I'm doing good. It's Saturday, so once we finish recording this, I'm all Utah, no Chargers. So, big game for Utah. Unfortunately, don't feel great about the chances of either of my teams winning this week. Utah does not know how to score the football right now, and the Chargers are kind of a hot mess right now too. So, it is what it is. But should fun college football Saturday. Excited to get back and watch the rest of this Ohio State and Penn State game. If you've been watching Alex Katzen's video, you've seen that the Chargers scouts have been very present for Penn State football. They are there at the Horseshoe today in Ohio for, I believe this is the 5th time the scouts have been present watching Penn State football. So maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something, but should be a great game. And hopefully you guys, whatever team you are rooting for, wins today, unless you root for the USC Trojans.
Fine. Well, it's been a good pod.
Oh man, funny. Speaking of former USC Trojans, if you missed it, I got to interview Tuli Tuipulotu yesterday. Honestly, was one of my favorite interviews I've ever done with a Chargers player. Just super personable, gave great answers, and we can talk about some of your takeaways from this, Tyler. But I think one of the things I really enjoyed is just really hearing how much Khalil Mack in particular, and Joey, but Khalil in particular, is really paving the way for Tuli and what he's doing as a player, and the kind of mentality that Tuli is that Khalil is passing along to Tuli. I asked him about that play where Kenneth Murray got the tackle for loss and he took on Tyler Smith, head on. He was pulling across the formation on a trap play, and he was like, I don't have a choice. Like he's coming at me, and I see Khalil Mack do this all the time. So I think hearing about how much Khalil and Joey mean to Tuli right now was really, really cool thing for me to hear. He's really absorbing everything from those two.
Yeah, he could only be as good as he is so far because of some of the mentors that he has around him. And of course, we've seen Joey, and in the all-in clip, we see a lot of him talking to Joey, and how he was so excited just to be celebrating with Joey after that one play. That meant the world to him because he's like, "Oh, I'm finally contributing." It's like, you're contributing just fine.
You're pretty good, man.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you are definitely contributing. So that was great. The part about power being so important was awesome, and that's certainly an aspect of his game I thought would translate pretty well, and it did, and has certainly early on. The rest has all been icing and cherry on top and whatnot. But good guy, good kid. I never know how an interview is going to go, but I always can kind of tell based on how long the interview went. Sometimes it's just like the guy only has 10 minutes and that's it, so you have to stick by the 10 minutes. So to see like an 18-minute interview out of this just kind of speaks to the questions that you asked, of course, but also the answers that Tuli provided, and how generous he was with his time.
Yeah, no, 100%. A lot of times, like Tyler said, we work with the team to get these arranged. And sometimes these players on travel weeks don't have as much time. Sometimes they have meetings right after. Sometimes they have to go to therapy or rehab or whatever the case may be. And so sometimes we get 10 minutes. This time I was lucky enough to get around 20 with Tuli. And just I thought he was super thoughtful with his questions, or with his answers, excuse me. So it was a great discussion. Hopefully you guys watched it. Every time I get an interview with these players in advance, I will ask the Discord members for some questions. So that's a good benefit if you're interested in joining the Discord, or if you're kind of on the fence and you've ever been wanting to ask some Chargers players some questions. That's a great way for you to do that. Our guy Baconator had a great question about the advice that Tuli has been getting from Khalil and Joey. When I asked him that question, Tuli he thought about it for like 15 seconds. He couldn't decide like where to take that question, because you could just tell that those two mean so much to him. And then eventually he was able to give a good answer. But So we got some great questions from the Discord. I obviously prepared my own questions, and thankfully Tuli had enough time to make it work, and it was a great interview. So again, if you missed it, please go check it out. One of probably the biggest positive side of the season so far, specifically for the defense. And hopefully you guys got a little bit more insight into Tuli. It was kind of Tuli week. We talked about him on the Chargers channel, on our channel, and then he was all the all-in feature, and then we got to interview him. So happy Tuli week, I guess.
Yeah, Tuli week, Tuli being great already, and a GAC bump. Like, what is going to happen on Sunday, man? Like, Chargers are going to lose, but what's he going to do on Sunday? Who knows?
Yeah. Should be fun. Positive matchup, I think, for all of the Chargers edge rushers this week against the Chiefs offensive tackle. So should be fun. All right, Tyler. As always, we'll have our final injury report status here. I think the biggest, most positive piece of news this week that we can talk about, and you tweeted about this with the injury report. No injury designation for Joey Bosa heading into the game week. He was a full participant in practice yesterday for the first time leading up to the Dolphins game. He's had the hamstring injury, and he's been dealing with this broken toe, which he disclosed yesterday, which our Discord members knew several weeks ago. And he's been playing through that. So no injury designation for Joey. It seems like he's getting healthier. I don't know if you've had a chance to finish the defensive film, but what did you think of what you saw from Joey, and what does him being healthy mean for him going forward in this defense?
I didn't watch Joey specifically. That game, I was mostly just watching, honestly, just Derwin. What was his contribution to the game? So mine was more secondary focused and trenches focused, and then a bit more of the interior defensive line. So I didn't watch Joey specifically, but him being healthy is awesome. And look, Tuli's been the best defender. Tuli's arguably been the best player on defense, the most consistent player on defense. But Joey Bosa, when he is healthy and when he gets going, is a significantly better pure edge rusher. And I know that people want to just immediately move on. Tuli should start over Joey, whatever. And there definitely needs to be a lot of Tuli on the field. There should be a lot of Tuli on the field, no matter who's healthy. But Joey is still the guy that is the better pure edge rusher, probably the best of the three of them at rushing the passer in terms of what he can do. Now, if he's healthy, it's a whole other story. But it's nice to see that he's officially off the injury report.
Yeah.
I didn't know what kind of fracture it was. We knew it was a fracture. Like you said, Discord knew it was a fracture, but we didn't know what kind of fracture. So I'm glad to hear it was a small whatever fracture and that he's mostly over it. But this is it. The storyline is going to be Herbert versus Mahomes, but one, quarterbacks never play each other like that. Two, I really think the storyline for this game, if they win or lose, it's can these three edge rushers and the interior stop Patrick Mahomes and hold contain when he tries to scramble or whatever it is. Like, this is really what it comes down to, is these three guys right here. Because there's we assume Derwin James, or at minimum a very limited Derwin James, I'm just praying that Travis Kelce doesn't have 200, and that's really it at this point.
Yeah,
he's gonna have a big day, and if he doesn't, I'll be stunned. But if he doesn't, potentially it's because of these edge rushers getting to Patrick Mahomes. So them having what seems to be their best situation of having the three together, because sure, they had that in week one, but Tuli, we had no idea he was going to be this. Now you do know what he can bring. So this is the best 1, 2, 3 they've had of the season. They seem to be the healthiest they've been. And like, if I'm not mistaken, Chris Rumpf has 0 pressures still through a few games. Now he's still coming back from injury. He's not playing a ton, but he hasn't had that same impact, right? There's a very big difference in impact between Tuli in limited snaps versus Chris Rumpf in limited snaps. So having that as your true 1, 2, 3 is going to be awesome this week.
Yeah, just a slight difference there. People are so quick to just try and ship Joey Bosa off, and he's always hurt, and Tuli should be the guy, and Tuli should definitely be on the field more often. I agree, but the best kind of combination that the Chargers have is when Joey Bosa is out there, because it means you're able to move him around. It means you're able to move Tuli around, and just seek out mismatches, and create those one-on-one opportunities. It means you can move Morgan Fox around. So Joey being healthy, relative for Joey at this point, like the injuries are what they are. You pointed this out. Joey's always kind of seems to be dealing with something, but he also plays through a lot. You know, he plays through the hamstring, he plays through the toe, and he's been effective in certain moments. Like, I don't think people realize like how just not excruciating, but annoying dealing with a broken toe would be as an edge rusher who's always on the front of your toes and trying to plant with a broken toe, how painful that can be. Um, I thought watching the film back, Joey made an impact for sure. There were two pressures he had that were negated by secondary penalties. He had a super clean inside scissors swipe on Tyron Smith and got home with the pressure and hit Dak Prescott, and Dak rolled out. And then that caused a defensive holding penalty on, I think it was Jasir Taylor. There were a couple other pressures in there. He had a couple really nice run defense reps. So Joey's making an impact. It's just not showing up in the sack department yet, but also he rushed the passer like 21 times total, I think. So as he continues to rush the passer more, he's going to have more opportunities for sacks and more opportunities to change the game. So you mentioned it, like the secondary is in such a tough spot right now. Derwin, which we can definitely talk about, he has an ankle injury. He's questionable. His status is completely up in the air right now. I think Brandon Staley indicated yesterday it's a game time decision. They had Jalen Hawkins have some kind of illness with dehydration issues, get carted off the field in his first practice. So he has one practice with the Chargers under his belt, and he's probably going to play like 15, 20 snaps against this team because the Chargers safety room is just so thin right now with Alohi Gilman out. The cornerbacks are struggling. So the best path the Chargers defense has to stopping this team is getting home on Patrick Mahomes. And so Joey Bosa being healthy, Tuli coming into his own, Khalil has been rushing the passer much more effectively the last few weeks. Morgan Fox has been super efficient with his rushes. That's the path. Get home on Patrick Mahomes, get some sacks. Maybe you create a turnover or two, and you can ease the pressure on your secondary.
Now that I'm thinking of it, how have the Chargers been after the defense gets a takeaway, which hasn't been a ton, but after the defense gets a takeaway or the second or special teams forces a fumble, how have they been? I feel like
they scored after the special teams fumble against the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Against the Raiders, I think they scored at least one touchdown after the turnover. Is there like a big stat for that?
Probably.
NFL points.
Or somebody in the chat can do some of the legwork for us.
Turnover.
But yeah, that'll be huge. I don't know. So I'm actually currently watching the offense again and just sort of watching Herbert, and I thought that game was really bad. I'm only in the first half of the game, but I thought it was even worse than I thought when watching it live. There's an aspect of timing of play calling and helping out your quarterback that I think Kellen Moore could have improved on. But with that said, there were so many opportunities beyond the Keenan plays, beyond the one flat to Darius Davis, where like Palmer was open or Keenan was open again. And Herbert was just, I don't know what happened to Herbert that game, but he wasn't anticipating. There was clearly a shot play to Josh Palmer where Quentin Johnson occupied the corner and the safety, and Herbert was looking that way, but instead of anticipating and throwing to where Palmer would be, he just like turned away, and I forget what happened. It was a rollout or something. We ended up scrambling. It was a bad game. So what I'm trying to say is if the offense and Herbert struggle again, some of these takeaways will be great for this team.
Yeah, I'm trying to find like a specific stat. I can't find one. I feel like they've been much better this year scoring after a turnover. Last year, I feel like anytime the defense got a turnover, it was just kind of like 3 and out or whatever. Against the Vikings, they didn't force any turnovers, did they?
Maybe Downs.
Okay, so against the Raiders, the first forced fumble that they had. Okay, so they scored 2 touchdowns after the 2 fumbles against the Raiders, and then the interception was the end of the game. So, or 2 for 3, but really like a score opportunity. I wish there were a faster way to do this, but Just going through the ESPN play-by-play right now. Let's see.
Addison fumbled. Did they score?
Against the Vikings, after the Vikings fumble, the Chargers scored a touchdown. That was the only turnover of the day. They had 4th downs, like you mentioned. The Chargers also went downs after that. And then the Kirk interception was the end. So that's pretty good efficiency so far. Let's look at the Titans game. I know against the Dolphins, it wasn't that, but we'll get to them in a second here. Against the Titans, the Chargers scored a field goal after the first 4th down series. And that was the only turnover of the day for the Titans, which is great. Love that. That game really is just so much fun to look at again. Ugh. Okay, Dolphins game. This is live TV, folks. Okay, so against the Dolphins, Tua fumbled that snap on the opening drive. Chargers scored a touchdown on that next drive. Second half, Tua threw that interception to JC. The Chargers went promptly 3 and out after that one, and that was it. So they were 1 for 2 after turnovers that day. So pretty good, couple field goals, couple touchdown drives, pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Point is, create some turnovers and score.
Yes. I am curious about this specific matchup because Arjun has pointed out he's done great work with the shadow report. And I was talking with Daniel Harms, who's a Chiefs film analyst, about their secondary, and L'Jarius Sneed has been very intentionally shadowing number 1 receivers this year, and he's playing great football right now. But Keenan Allen obviously plays in the slot more often than not, and that's obviously where Trent McDuffie lines up. So I am curious what happens if the Chiefs kind of elect to have L'Jarius Sneed follow Joshua Palmer. I think that's a bad thing. If L'Jarius Sneed is shadowing Josh Palmer, I think that means Josh Palmer is going to be like a non-factor. I like Josh Palmer. I think he's a fine number 2. I think he's a fine number 3 receiver. But L'Jarius Sneed is one of the best cornerbacks in the league right now. And so if he shadows Josh Palmer, I think the Chargers are going to have to pivot to another direction. If they have Sneed follow Keenan Allen, I think that's probably a good thing because Keenan Allen has shown in the past that he can beat Sneed and create separation. And he's Keenan Allen. He's playing at a super high level. So I am curious to see what Spagnuolo does with his cornerbacks. If he just is like, hey, we trust Trent McDuffie on Keenan Allen, that's a good thing. If we just kind of play like static alignment, so I am going to keep an eye on where L'Jarius Sneed is going. If he's following somebody, who is he following? And how do the Chargers respond to that? So if he's following Joshua Palmer, the Chargers are going to have to find another direction to, create some passing plays. Josh Palmer has been such a key piece for them without Mike Williams. Does that finally lead to a Quentin Johnston game? You pointed out in your bold predictions, Gerald Everett. Is this a Gerald Everett game? So I am curious to see what kind of answers Kellen Moore has for L'Jarius Sneed and how Spagnuolo on the other side is using him. That's one of the things that we didn't talk about on Thursday that I did want to talk about today.
I'm almost curious because even Arjun pointed out recently, like, I feel I'm pretty bullish on the Chargers offense this week because of how good they are against the blitz.
Yeah.
And obviously we talked about how the Chiefs love to blitz. What are the odds he just completely throws a monkey wrench in the whole thing and just allows his front to go, especially with the Menahu back? And instead of blitzing like crazy, allows his guys to just win up front and kind of throw off what I would expect from this game.
I would have to look at the numbers more. I feel like Spagnuolo generally stays true to who he is and blitzes a lot. But I can't remember off the top of my head if he's ever really like backed off the blitz against the Chargers. But
I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
I'm going to look up at least last year's final game.
Yeah. So again, that's another thing. If you missed Arjun's report, and that is something that he talked about, the Chargers, he put it in his graphic. I can't remember which thing it was for, but the Chargers are number 1 in league in EPA per play. I think it's against the blitz. Am I right there?
Sure.
Is that,
I missed
is that
that
the
one.
stat?
Sorry, I
Okay.
didn't pick up that one.
Either way, the Chargers are fantastic against the blitz, and generally speaking, that's what Justin Herbert has played well with. And the thing that the Chargers offensive line is struggling more with is like the stunt packages that come with these teams, and that is something that Spagnuolo does a lot as well, and obviously moves Chris Jones around a lot. Daniel Harms seems to think that Omenihu is actually going to be used more as an inside rusher than a true edge rusher. He did give the caveat that like when Omenihu was practicing with the team and playing in the preseason, Chris Jones was not around. And so that could have been like their solution was trying to figure out who can play that Chris Jones role. And that could have been Omenihu's chance to make plays. But that's another thing to keep an eye on, obviously, is how does Charles Omenihu get used? Because he can rush on the inside. He can rush on the outside as well. He's basically like an Arden Key, Danico Autry type of edge rusher.
Was he suggesting it's kind of like he flip-flops wherever Chris Jones is?
Pretty much.
Chris Jones edge. And okay, gotcha.
Pretty much. So George Karlaftis is going to stay at edge. Mike Dana is going to stay at edge. And then basically on the opposite side, he thinks that it's like Omenihu and Chris Jones are just going to flip-flop.
Get it together, Chargers. Watching the first half of the game, I've only got through the first half of the offense. It felt like the left side was a little bit better at picking things up than the right side. And I think you pointed that out as much. But it really felt like the left side, there were losses, but it didn't feel like it was like a pickup issue. There was a really good one by Zion. And the right side felt more mentally behind.
Yeah, and also some of that is just like natural recovery ability. Obviously, Slater and Zion, like they're able to get places faster than Jamari and Trey can because of their athleticism and just natural ability. But it is concerning that the right side has not shown as much improvement against stunts as I would have liked. When they're given individual opportunities, like if you're bull rushing Jamari, like you're not getting anywhere. He's so strong and stout at the point of attack, but when him and Trey have to block stunts up, it's just been a struggle. And I tweeted out the final video of the Micah Parsons sack, and he's cutting inside, and I think it was Dorrance Armstrong was kind of looping around towards the middle, and then they also brought a nickel or a safety off of the edge, and Austin Eckler was there. But Trey like kind of got spooked a little bit by the pressure off the edge, and it was just kind of a struggle. And it's been kind of a struggle for them to pick up stunts. And this is a week where that's going to matter. These guys have to work things out a little bit more, more frequently, because it's been a struggle with those two. Zion and Rashawn, I think, are really effective at picking up stunts. And people are pointing out too, like Corey Linsley's out, but I actually think that's something that Will Clapp is really good at. He's pretty good as the cleanup man. Like somebody looping around towards Will Clapp, I feel like he generally picks that up well. It's the inside rusher against Jamari and Trey that has been causing problems. And it's Micah Parsons, it's Max Crosby, it's Jeffrey Simmons. Like I get it, but at the same time, it's like this has been an issue all season long, and you would have hoped that it would be a little bit more effective at this point.
Yeah, I found that Jamari and Trey are the ones struggling the most here, and that Will Clapp is actually doing all right. I don't think they've ever like gone after Will Clapp or made it more difficult for him. I always feel like it's Jamari, but no, I thought Will Clapp's been playing fine. But again, I only watched the first half of that game, so maybe the second half is terrible.
I would tend to agree with that. Will Clapp is doing well. I pointed this out after the Lindsay injury. This is the first time where he's like truly the guy as a center. With the Saints, he was mostly playing guard. Last year, it's like pickup duty here and there. So they've given him Will Clapp a lot more reps this year. Lindsay rest days during the summer. Now he's like the guy at center, and I think he's playing well. I do. Definitely there are some aspects of where they miss Corey Linsley from a protection standpoint because he's so smart at IDing everything, and the leadership aspect too. He's the leader of the guy in the room. Everybody else is still relatively young along the offensive line. So they miss Corey. I don't want to get it twisted, but I do think that Will Clapp is playing well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, that's kind of we didn't really talk a ton about the injuries, but I had some other things that I wanted to discuss here. Derwin James officially questionable. We'll see what happens there. Another game for Alohi Gilman with his heel injury. This is 3 weeks, obviously, so maybe there was some consideration of placing him on IR. I don't know, but they need him back. I think Dean Marlowe is playing well, but I'm nervous about this one from the safety perspective with Dean Marlowe and AJ Finley playing key roles. Jalen Hawkins probably has to play a little bit this week. We don't know what Derwin's status is. This is the worst possible week to have safety issues going up against Travis Kelce. So it's a tough spot. Second, the cornerback room has not played super great. Dean Leonard is out again. So the secondary is concerning right now.
Dean Leonard, okay, obviously Derwin being out is the tougher one, but Dean Leonard being out is problematic because I feel like maybe you give Michael Davis on Travis Kelce or you do something. I don't know. It's kind of worked before, but who's the outside guy? Who's the other guy you use? I don't think that you have another guy there if Zon's your other outside guy. So Dean being out is kind of a problem here. So I feel like that would have helped a ton with their flexibility. So I don't know. I keep going back to, and I keep making the mistake in my head of, oh, well, look, the last time they didn't have the safety and the safety group was in shambles. That was the Dolphins, right? And that was in last year's Dolphins game. But then I remember, well, at least Alohi was in that game. They were missing Derwin and Bryce Callahan at slot, but at least they had Alohi Gilman who had a good game. Without Gilman, without Derwin, obviously without JT Woods, without Dean Leonard, it's a rough one. And I'm just expecting Mahomes to look great down the field. Thankfully, they're not a team that throws bombs down the field, but still, that the way that they'll attack the secondary and the safeties, it just feels like those chunk plays, like they did against the Chargers last year. Everything was here's 8 yards and then 15 more after the catch. And
yeah,
I don't know that Marlowe or Finley or Hawkins are guys that can really be plus guys against Travis Kelce. Unfortunately, at least maybe there's some athleticism. You can catch up to guys, tackle well. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this group.
Yeah, Daniel Popper pointed this out. With Derwin on the field against the Chiefs, Travis Kelce is averaging 2-point-something yards per route run. Without Derwin James on the field, Travis Kelce against the Chargers is averaging over 6 yards per route run, which is an insane number. Anything over 3 is like you're doing elite stuff, man. And without Derwin, you're talking about 6 yards per route run. It's crazy. Some of that is other injuries, right? Like being matched up with like Trey Marshall and stuff like that. But a lot of it too is just like catch and run and missed tackle opportunities. And the overtime game in 2021, I think at the end of towards the end of the season, Travis Kelce catches a 6-yard slant and then takes it 55 yards to the house. Stuff like that just cannot happen this week. You can let Travis get his 8, get his 9 yards, whatever the case may be. But if you don't have Derwin on the field, you have to absolutely rally and tackle and get Travis Kelce on the ground. If you're talking about broken plays and this is a game where he has 100 yards after the catch, then it's going to be really, really tough sledding. So, I wish Derwin were healthy. Travis Kelce was talking on his own podcast that Derwin is his toughest matchup, that Derwin is the guy who gives him the most problems. And, he spoke very highly of Derwin and was watching every single one-on-one rep this week that he's ever had against Derwin James. And I'm sure Derwin was doing the same kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I know everybody's super down on Derwin right now. This is the worst possible game to not have Derwin because Derwin is the only guy really in the league that can manage Travis Kelce one-on-one. You're never going to stop a guy like him, but Derwin against Travis has been the best player in the league at defending him one-on-one. So it's a bummer, man. It is. Like you mentioned, I think I probably would put Michael Davis there, get physical with him, put him at the line of scrimmage, but that obviously requires Michael Davis going into the slot more often, being around the line of scrimmage more often. So I don't know how much we'll see that, but we've seen it sometimes in the past. But obviously, it's tough to put your outside corner in the slot with line of scrimmage and fix everything around him that way.
Yeah, I don't know what the game plan is going to be. It worked. Everyone is so like, oh, it's just Jake Ferguson. Like, they had a very clear plan to take away Jake Ferguson. And as we talked about in the preview, Jake Ferguson was more involved in the red zone than CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, or Michael Gallup.
He's a good player, man.
He's also a good player. Like, he's not Travis Kelce, sure, but he's gonna be like Hunter Henry, basically.
Yeah.
And would you, and Derwin James was tasked with taking away Jake Ferguson or Hunter Henry. Like, I think that's a solid plan, especially with how important he was. And with Jerry Jones literally saying we should throw it to our tight ends more this week, they're going to go out and make sure that Jake Ferguson's taken away. And he did a phenomenal job with that. So it's unfortunate that with an actual tight end that fans know the name of, that he's going to be out, because I think what they did with him against Ferguson last week worked really well. And now it's Dean Marlowe. And look, I'm not putting a ceiling on Dean Marlowe's, game, I guess. He's been a pleasant surprise, but I don't
for sure
believe the floor is that great either.
Yeah. All right. We'll get to our prize picks of the week here, and then we'll do our game picks as well. PrizePicks has been a great partner for us. We strongly encourage you guys to go check them out. It's the best and easiest daily fantasy sports app out there. It's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick a more or less line against your favorite players or favorite matchups. And we strongly encourage you to go to prizepicks.com/guilty and use the code guilty at checkout for a deposit match up to $100. Using PrizePicks and our code really does help support the show. So please go check them out. Tyler, what are your favorite prize picks of the week for the Chargers and Chiefs game?
Okay, so for Patrick Mahomes, I have him at more than 25.5 pass completions. They're not a team that is throwing it down the field the whole time, but that dink and dunk is something that they're very good at. And without the safeties, I just think that it's, again, Travis Kelce will get half of those. Rashee Rice gets some more, etc. So I think the completions will be there for the Chiefs this week. I had another one here. Austin Eckler at more than 12.5 rushing attempts. I thought that was pretty low considering he even came back from injury. I think he had 14 last week or whatever. They talked about how the game plan going into that game against the Cowboys was that they were going to be run heavy, and they never got to that really. But I think that would carry into this week. The Chiefs defense is not as great against the run, so I could see them definitely going more on that one. And then this immediately means I'm screwed now. But to pat myself on the back, earlier in the week, Gardner Minshew at 218.5 passing yards. I'd hit less. And if you go to try to do that same one now, it's now Gardner Minshew at 193.5 pass yards. So it's dropped about 25 yards since I jumped in earlier this week. So still, the over. I think he means over, NSN. Someone take the over on Mahomes rushing yards. Says Alex. I wonder if there is a Mahomes rushing over.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. So you can get pass plus rush yards. Oh, you can get rush yards. PrizePicks has that at 25.5. So that's pretty high for Patrick Mahomes.
That is high.
I don't know if I would take more than 25.5, but I wouldn't begrudge anybody from not choosing that given history.
You can feel pretty comfortable with a lot of Chiefs overs this game.
Yeah.
Outside of maybe like Pacheco, because the Chargers run defense has been pretty good.
Yeah, I think this is more of a dink and dunk game. Yeah, I was looking at Rashee Rice. He's kind of been the guy over the middle for the Chiefs this year. He's their new version of Juju Smith-Schuster. So, the Chargers play a good amount of zone. Theoretically, they might play man this week. I don't know, but his reception line is 3.5. So that was a line that I liked more from the Chiefs perspective. That's maybe a little bit under the radar. Austin Eckler, 34.5 receiving yards. I think I feel pretty good about that being more. I mentioned, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, great cornerbacks for the Chargers. I think this could be a game where we see some screens, some checkdowns to Austin Eckler. And listen, Austin Eckler's a great receiving back. So 34.5, I think for me feels good there. Going back to this same kind of line of thinking, Josh Palmer is 48.5 receiving yards. I think that's less this week. I'm concerned about his matchup chances this week. And so if you have him in fantasy, if you want to take the under here, or the less, I think those are good decisions this week.
So just for the Mahomes rushing yards thing, he had 2 attempts for -1 yards in week 2 last year. I'm assuming there's a kneel down in there. And then 1 rushing attempt for 23 yards. The second game in 2021, he was, how does it say 0 attempts but 45 yards? How does that work? On scrambles, I'm guessing? Like non-design?
Scramble would still count as an attempt, though.
It says 0 attempts for 45 yards. That's how good Mahomes is at rushing and scrambling. And there's another one for 1 for 32 yards. Ooh. Okay.
Yeah, it's always like a back-breaking time too for Mahomes.
Yay.
So I don't know. All right. Again, prizepicks.com/guilty, code guilty at checkout for a deposit match of $100 on your first sign up. Okay, we'll get to our weekly picks here, and then we'll get to some questions for about 20 minutes. From a record standpoint, Arjun is 13-10. Alex Katzen is 10-13. Alex Insdorf is 16-7. He's doing great with his NFL picks. It's the Chargers picks that have really been biting Alex in the ass so far. Tyler is tied with Arjun at 13-10, and then I am 12-11. So this week, Arjun has the Bills over the Patriots as his favorite of the week, the Lions over the Ravens as his underdog of the week. That was a pick I strongly considered as well. And then he has the Seahawks over the Cardinals, and he has the Chiefs winning 31-28. Alex Katzen has the Packers as his favorite of the week. They're playing the Broncos, I believe. Yes. He has the Arizona Cardinals as his underdog of the week, beating the Seahawks. So chance for Alex Katzen to potentially make up some ground here, as both Arjun and I have the Seahawks beating the Cardinals, and then he has the Washington Commanders as his either or pick. He also has the Chiefs winning 31-23. Alex Insdorf has the Rams over the Steelers as his favorite of the week, the Atlanta Falcons over the Buccaneers as his underdog of the week, and then the Bills over the Patriots as well. And he has the Chiefs winning 27-21.
Man, Arjun really went with the Bills over the Patriots, the Seahawks over the Cardinals, and Detroit as the upset over the Ravens. Very bold over you, Arjun. No, I'm kidding. We left that for you, I think. I could have taken those. Here's my barn burner of picks. The Las Vegas Raiders and Brian Hoyer.
You're choosing the backup bowl, huh?
Oh, yeah, the backup bowl, 100%. Over, I've already forgotten the Bears quarterback's last name. Yeah, that's a fun one. Then I have Cleveland over the Colts as my other either or. Again, we just wanted to try some different things. I was the first person to take Detroit over Baltimore. So I felt like, okay, if I take that one, which feels pretty good, I'll like try to make my other ones more difficult. So yeah, Cleveland over Indy and Vegas over Chicago. And then for this game, for the Chargers, I do have Kansas City winning. So I'm going to say loss. Chargers lose 24-27. I got to see this offense start to pick it up and really start scoring again before I believe in their scoring ceiling a bit more. And then this Chiefs defense is, again, very good. Anything that isn't a Drew Tranquil revenge game will be a success, in my opinion.
That's sad. But that's where we're at. Yeah, I'm not picking the Chargers to win. They have to show it to me first. This is a team that's really struggling with consistency. They're struggling with, key moments and key situations. Like I keep on going back to these kind of decisions, Donald Parham running out of bounds prematurely, Keenan Allen running out of bounds prematurely, the penalties. There's just execution things that are popping up in key situations left and right that are really holding this team back. I think for the first quarter and most of the second quarter, this team is pretty good. And I think for most of the third quarter, most of the fourth quarter, this team is pretty good. But the Chiefs have so much experience. They have, like, whatever you think of the quarterback, Patrick Mahomes is the most clutch quarterback I've ever seen in my entire life. Just always shows up in these key moments. The game is at Arrowhead. Like it's just Everything's stacking up against the Chargers this week. Now, it would be very classic Chargers to win this game, and I hope they do, but I can't pick them to win. This team is just in prove it mode, and this is a do or die situation essentially. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs with a loss, of course, in week 7. But Alex Insdorf pointed this out on Twitter the other day, or it might have been this morning actually. Their playoff odds basically double if they win. And if they lose, you're talking about a team with like around 20% of a playoff chance. So it's just really frustrating. It's a frustrating spot to be in. They should have beaten the Titans. They should have beaten the Cowboys. I don't necessarily begrudge them for not beating the Dolphins, although they probably should have won that game too. So, this team is 2-3. They could very easily be 4-1 or 3-2 or whatever. But the situational football is just really biting this team in the ass. So until they figure it out, I am not picking them to beat good teams. And the Chiefs are a really good team. Mm-hmm. I know some people have pointed out like the offense is kind of struggling, but it just feels like they're kind of playing with their food a little bit on offense and trying to figure some things out and experiment with some things. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Chiefs because they have the best quarterback in football, the best tight end in football, and the best head coach play caller in football. So I'm going to say Chiefs win. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I do think the offense bounces back. I'll say 30-27 Chiefs win.
Sounds like a Harrison Butker field goal to end things, or
yeah.
Sounds about right, unfortunately.
But like I said, I do trust the offense to figure things out this week. I think they'll bounce back, but I can't trust this team to win until we see otherwise.
I honestly could have even picked them to win if Mike Williams are back and one of Corey Linsley or Derwin James. Then I could talk myself into it. But without Mike, I got to see the ceiling of this offense. Without Derwin, there goes whoever is going to cover Travis Kelce. So, yeah, unfortunate. I'll pick them to win against the Bears next week. There's that.
Yes.
But
yes. especially if they're playing Tyson Bagent.
Yeah. Although, who knows? Maybe he has a really great game and then just put me out of my misery.
We'll talk about the Bears when we get there, but them having an undrafted free agent as their backup quarterback is a choice. All right. So we'll get some questions now. We'll take questions for about 20 minutes-ish, depending how the questions roll in. So super chats always appreciated. I saw we got one earlier from Tyler's mom, as always. That's always appreciated. She's crushing it on PrizePicks, and you guys can crush it on PrizePicks too. So go take advantage. Alex Insdorf, over under Taylor Swift cutaways in attendance. It's not available on PrizePicks. It should be though. I would say over under 2.5.
Over for sure. If we count pregame, then that's definitely an over. If we count during the game, I mean, it's Travis Kelce versus Dean Marlowe, so I feel like Taylor Swift is going to be celebrating a lot. All respect to Dean Marlowe, but that is Travis Kelce. So, it's going to be a bit.
Like, Travis has, a big play, a touchdown.
Cut away. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cut
away to Taylor.
I'd love to see Taylor Swift if, Derwin James body slams Kelce at the 2-yard line again, then cut away to Taylor Swift, but not happening.
Yeah. Man.
Here's a miserable one. What familiar yet unexpected way do we predict the Chargers to give us all a heart attack this week?
Intercept Mahomes and then fumble it, and the Chiefs recover.
I'm going to say they get out to a 14-0 lead and then blow it.
Oh, God. If they're 14-0 and lose, oh, my God.
I feel like the last couple of games, the Chargers do start out strong, and then it's the Andy Reid Mahomes whatever show. So,
yes.
I want to say they start out 14-0, and then
Arjun tweeted about this. Let me find it.
He answered his own question. He thinks an egregious penalty mistake. That's a lock, regardless of what point in the game that happens. Or Quentin Johnson has a great catch, and then he runs and fumbles in the red zone. And we'll all say
this is just featuring Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert.
Okay.
So this is in chronological order from 2020 down. Chargers were up 14-6 and lost. Chargers up 14-3 and lost. That would have been at Arrowhead 2021. 14-10 at halftime and lost. Up 10-7 at halftime and lost, and up 20-13 at halftime and lost. So the Chargers have led the Chiefs at halftime every single time that Patrick Mahomes has matched up with Justin Herbert, and the Chargers have only won one of those games.
Great.
So that's fun.
Yeah, that's fun. A lot of comments. Let's see some questions.
I think we got a second super chat. Yeah. Okay. Michael DeVries. Appreciate Michael, one of the guys I interact most with on Twitter, I feel like. Why do you think the running game has gone all to hell? Lindsley, Slater injury. What do you make of this?
I was just charting this, and I kid you not, I can bring it up. I made a Google Doc titled "Why Run Game No Good," and I was just going through and charting like what the issue was on each play, and I never really found a consistent answer for anybody on this one. Maybe there's a certain like calls versus timing sort of thing, but it was like, okay, blocked well except for Donald Parham, blocked well except for Jamari, blocked well. Austin Eckler does not hit the hole and is dancing for some reason. Not blocked. Like there was no consistent answer that I had for it. I couldn't just point to you and say, oh, the right side, with the guard and tackle, that's what's killing them. No, it's kind of like everybody, like it was everybody, which is why you're so inefficient. If you are that bad as a rushing offense, as they have since week 2, it's not just really a one person thing. It is everyone. And maybe there are some call issues there as well, but it just really felt like everybody was to blame for this.
Yeah, that is fair. Corey Lindsley being out is definitely contributing. Slater's injury is definitely contributing. Although, like I talked about on Thursday, I think the biggest area where Rashawn is being affected by his injury is being explosive in his stance in pass protection. To me, the tight end blocking is the main issue. And I would say the second issue actually, how do I want to put that? The second issue I would say is running back inconsistencies. I think Joshua Kelly left some meat on the bone against the Titans and the Vikings and the Raiders. Some of that is that he's a backup running back, and that's fine. But there were definitely some times where he bounced too early or he missed a bounce, and then Austin Eckler this week too had some decision-making issues that we weren't necessarily accustomed to. But at the same time, this past week, the biggest issue was the tight end blocking, because the Cowboys traditionally play heavy boxes, and this week it was like taken to the next level. Like, I think they were very well prepared for the Chargers run game, and the Chargers just did not have the blockers to answer for it. So it's a lot of everything, but for me, the biggest issue is very clearly the tight end blocking, which, like, shocker, who would have guessed that one? Only all of us.
Yeah, there's just really just no displacement from these tight ends. Displacement forward. They're certainly getting displaced, but there's no on a pocket push, if you will. There's nothing where the running backs can operate. Again, Eckler's yards, I think about 27 yards last game, and 24 were after contact. Yeah. I mean, only 3 yards.
This past game was contact. A rough game in general, like everybody, like you mentioned. But
yeah.
Kind of a follow-up on this one. Oh, sorry. Did you have something else?
No, I just Eddie Dale was talking about. So tight end in round 2. Listen, we were going tight end pretty routinely in the first 3 rounds of every mock draft we did this past offseason. And
yeah, it's if Kellen is the offensive coordinator still next year, you have to figure out tight end. Like, you cannot run this same group back. Gerald Everett is a free agent. Trey McKitty has not worked out. He would be in the last year of his contract. Donald Parham has next year still on his contract, but he's on a very cheap deal. So, like, you have to get a more functional tight end group in here. And I think as pass catchers, I think you feel really good about Everett, Parham, and Stone Smart. I think that trio is pretty good from a receiving standpoint. But you can't have 3 undersized receivers as your 3 main tight ends. Like, you need a legitimate blocking tight end here. It's why we talked about signing Jeff Swain. It's why we talked about signing Mercedes Lewis. You could trade for one of those guys if you wanted to. Probably throw a 7th round pick their way. But yeah, you have to get a more functional blocking unit if Kellen Moore is going to be, really regardless of whoever your offensive coordinator is. Like, this group cannot be just run back. You have to get more functional tight ends in here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Stone Smart is like 2 years removed from playing quarterback, and he's a better blocker than Trey McKitty right now. Okay. Demetrius, do you guys think going forward we should follow the formula of the Niners and Eagles and invest heavy in the D-line and draft well in secondary and develop? Neither of those teams really draft the secondary. They draft mostly D-line, offensive line. If you look at the Eagles secondary, it's a lot of veterans that they sign for cheap and then potentially extend. Same thing with the 49ers. I don't think you have to follow any one formula to win. I definitely am in favor of building up the trenches as much as you can.
That's not what Twitter says.
Yeah. Some guy says he stopped following the podcast because I stopped talking about the offensive line. So not sure what that podcast that guy's listening to. But I think in general, like, it is a sound, process to invest in the trenches. And the Chargers have done a much better job of that under Brandon Staley. They've taken 2 offensive linemen in several drafts since then. Obviously drafting Tuli. Chris Rumpf hasn't necessarily worked out, but they at least drafted him. So, could you be a little bit more intentional about that? Sure. But I wouldn't be shocked if they took an edge rusher in the first 2 rounds next year, because you have the Joey and Khalil situation. So I think it just kind of depends, but I think yes and no to this question.
Yeah, the answer is really just depends.
Yeah.
But again, I keep going back to corner. I don't know this draft class at all, so I have no idea what the strength of the draft is in terms of where the Chargers might be and what corners are available. But it just feels like it's about due time for a player in the secondary in the first round. Really, just a player on defense in the first round. To Staley's, I don't know if credit's the right word, but like, he's been deferring. It's been a lot of offense, offense in the first round. So it is time, regardless of who's here, to invest in the defense and in particular in the secondary.
Yeah, I think most of the offense is going to be set for next year. Like, most of these guys are going to come back. Running back, you'll have to figure out. Tight end, you'll have to figure out. But like, the offensive line should be set. You can definitely take a center in like the 3rd, 4th round, depending on what Corey Linsley's issues are. But your receiving room is mostly set. So like, it is time for defense. They're going to look very different on defense. And I've kind of been like thinking about this and the way that like the Chargers have gone about defense. And like you just mentioned, they've kind of been heavy draft on offense, heavy free agency on defense.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the modern NFL, like, the best way to formulate your defense is to go heavy in the draft and develop philosophy, and then you fill in the gaps with like cheap, solid veterans. So that's kind of like, when the Chargers move off of these contracts and you have kind of this soft reset on defense, you want more young players and just like solid, cheap veterans, like your Kyle Van Noy contract, your Morgan Fox contract, your Bryce Callahan contract, kind of Eric Kendricks. He's kind of been not super great, but I think you want more young players on defense and less veterans is what I'm saying, because I just think you look at the common thread of these other teams is that like you're heavy on the young players, you fill in with cheap veterans, and then those young players get new contracts and you replace the cheap veterans with other young players in the draft. And I think that's just kind of like the cycle that you're wanting from a defensive perspective.
Yeah, I would agree there.
Roberto, excuse me. Any updates on JT Woods and Corey Linsley? No. The Chargers have not talked about either of them. I've seen Corey on the sidelines at games. I don't recall seeing JT Woods very often, but I'm sure he's there. Both of them have to miss this game and next game at minimum before they can come back. But I don't know where either of those players currently stand with their health because the team does not talk about it.
Do you feel Guyton and Otito return next week?
I think Jalen Guyton does. I think
Mhm.
they'll give Otito another week after that because Jalen Guyton said he feels 100%. He's just kind of acclimating to the rest of the team and the process and everything like that. So I think we see Jalen Guyton activated next week, and I think we see Otito back for another week because he's got to get used to all like the trench stuff and like really
Yeah.
trust his leg. Whereas Jalen says he's 100%. He's just working on the offense. So I think we see Jalen next week and Otito the week after that.
Yeah, everyone's returning at the imagine the narrative and the positive momentum of the Chargers win this game and then everybody's kind of returning. Even if they don't return against the Bears, I think they'll be fine regardless. And you're feeling good heading into New York game. They lose and it feels like too little, too late.
Yeah. What do you make of who they would cut if Jalen and Otito come back?
That's a great question. I'd have to see who they've sort of recently signed. Like, is Zach Bailey still?
Zach Bailey's still on the roster, active roster.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Dotson's on the active roster. You have Simi Fehoko,
Dotson. Oh yeah, that's true.
Christopher Hinton, who they've already cut this year.
Yeah, Hinton, Fehoko, Dotson. Probably some combination of those, depending on who returns. So if it's Guyton, then I think Fajoko's probably gone. Yeah, because Fehoko was inactive last game, right? Active for Raiders, inactive against where they just played Cowboys.
Yeah, anyway, I think Fehoko will be active this week though, because I think him not being active last week was more about like the Josh Palmer injury and wanting to have Keelan Doss, who they're probably a little bit more comfortable with from a playbook and receiving standpoint. But without Dean Leonard, no Raheem Lane, I think we see Fehoko active this week.
Oh, Tanner Muse.
Yeah, what about him?
That could be one. Oh, they're just bringing up people that could be cut.
Who they could cut?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Although Amon's hurt, so I don't know.
Oh, that's right.
Injury.
That's right. And special teams will still be good.
Yeah, because Ryan Ficken's amazing, man. I loved that. I wish somebody would have asked him about the Jasir Taylor thing, but somebody did ask him about the Dean Marlowe block where he was like running sideways like that. Ryan Ficken just like, it's incredible, man. He gets these players like Dean Marlowe signed after cutdown day, and he just locked in on special teams. Tanner Muse comes over from the Steelers, locked in on special teams. Your Raheem Lane undrafted free agent, locked in on special teams. Like, Ryan Ficken is awesome. I love Ryan Ficken.
Yeah, me too. He's fantastic. So the question from Christian Red, what do y'all think about Kenneth Murray's performance this year? He's definitely been a top 5 player in the defense. Okay, hold on. Let me actually think if that's true or not.
I don't know if the second half of that question is really saying much, though.
True. So I'd say, Tuli. Max still has to probably be up there, I think.
Yeah.
Probably Morgan Fox.
Yeah.
I think Sebastian Joseph Day has been really good. It's tough because we didn't see a lot of Alohi. Obviously, haven't seen a whole lot of Derwin.
Yeah.
Not the secondary players.
I would say your fifth is probably Kenneth or Asante.
Yeah.
But like you said, we haven't seen Derwin. We haven't seen Alohi all that much. Like, that is factored in there.
Mm-hmm. It's been, I think we said at the bye, it was the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah.
And then I thought he had a pretty solid game against the Cowboys in terms, not coverage wise, but line of scrimmage wise, which is all I can ask for at this point.
Yeah.
And so, it's been solid. It's nowhere near what we've seen from Drew or Kaiser in their better years, but it is still significantly better than what we saw last year from Kenneth Murray, really the last 2 years.
Yeah, there's been growth there for sure. Whatever they're doing from a run defense standpoint is really allowed him to play more aggressive. He's more decisive. Like his tackle for loss on Pollard that we talked about earlier from when Tuli took on the pulling guard, stuff like that wasn't happening. He would kind of slide over and then, maybe hit Tony Pollard in the hole. But for that to be a tackle for loss, I think really shows where he's grown at. Like you mentioned, coverage still an issue. At the very end of the game, if Dak Prescott throws like a tiny bit of a better route, then Tony Pollard scores on a wheel route. PFF credited him with the Tony Pollard broken play, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. He wasn't even really like close to Tony Pollard, but coverage is still an issue. I still hope like eventually Deion Henley can get on the field a little bit more and take some of that away from Kenneth Murray and really just allow Kenneth to focus on the run. But at the same time, he's calling the plays right now, so he's the one that's always out there as opposed to Eric Kendricks, which is kind of what we thought would be the case heading into the season.
I didn't even pay attention to that storyline last game that Kenneth Murray was still the green dot guy.
Yep, he's still calling the plays.
Odds he returns if this regime is still together.
Kenneth Murray? I think the odds have increased. But you kind of drafted his replacement last year. I guess
or
that
Kendrick's replacement.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like it maybe depends what you do with Kendricks. So maybe you kind of try and free up some money by cutting Kendricks and Sebastian Joseph Day instead of one of the bigger guys, and maybe you sign Murray back to a 1 year, $3 million deal kind of thing.
Was the linebacker market horrible last year?
Yes. I think that's part of the reason why Drew ended up on a minimum contract in Kansas City as opposed to other places.
I'm not ready for that game, man. Tomorrow. Like, we've seen revenge games for sure.
Yeah.
But this just feels so specifically set up to be a revenge game in the perfect way for Drew. I need Gerald Everett to just run him over for 50 yards.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Kenneth Murray's playing well. Odds that he comes back, I think, are still trending towards no, but he's played well enough that I think the odds are increasing in his favor. But like, this team's not going to have very much money, and like, you know, re-signing Kenneth Murray, probably not super high up on my priority board for next year. No,
definitely not. But I don't know. We'll see. Gotta pay one of these linebackers at some point.
Yes. They pay Kenneth Murray instead of guys here in Drew, man. Think about where this defense would be at right now if they still had Kaiser White and Drew Tranquil.
I don't know. Secondary still stinks, so I don't know. But last year they would have been better with both of them.
100%. All right. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
Guys, if it's anything other than a loss tomorrow, I will be very happy on this live stream. We'll go live tomorrow after Sunday Night Football. I'm expecting a loss. This is the worst I felt about the Chargers facing the Chiefs in quite some time. And I think they're going to lose. And I think that tomorrow the season unofficially comes to an end. So look, anything other than that would be awesome, because financially, you know, it'd be nice to head into the Christmas season and the holiday season with wins and views, not losses and no views, because boy, it is struggling anywhere you look right now. I feel like the fans are 28 hours from checking out. So hopefully they don't.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully this is a win. This team, you know, that has performed well with their backs against the wall, and their back is certainly against the wall tomorrow against the Chiefs. So appreciate you guys sticking with us. Again, if you missed any of our videos this week, we had bolt breakdowns from Alex Insdorf. We had Alex Katzen's roundup from college football and the Chargers scouting visits, Arjun and his Chargers analytics, my interviews with Daniel Harms, the Chiefs film analyst, and Tuli Tuipulotu. Please go check those out. Like Tyler said, we really appreciate any extra views that you guys can give us at this point. Share the podcast with a friend and leave us a rating review, like the show, subscribe, all that good stuff. Really does help us continue to grow the show throughout the rest of the season. So appreciate you guys tuning in. That's going to do it for us today. We'll see you tomorrow after Sunday Night Football. As always, bolt up.